Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Suleiman Suleiman. Today our focus is on the corruption in the ministries, departments and agencies. These are generally called MDAs. The fight against corruption was one of three major campaign promises of this current government. And once Buhari was elected in 2015, the president implemented a number of measures, including the Treasury Single Account, called the TSA, and the whistleblower policy to curb corruption and other financial infractions. These policies are in addition to the work of anti-graft agencies like the EFCC, the ICPC, and many others. Yet, corruption remains a major problem in Nigeria. However, most of the focus about corruption in Nigeria has always been on the politicians, particularly the National Assembly. Every time people talk about corruption, they talk about the legislators. But then the civil service tends to escape public scrutiny when it comes to these issues. But it is not also insulated from corruption. In fact, politicians cannot engage in corruption without active involvement from the civil servants. For example, earlier this year, the ICPC said it reviewed 208 MDAs and found misapplication of billions of naira in terms of personnel and capital funds. So we are asking today, do we have more corruption in the MDAs? What can we do about corruption in the MDAs? And how come the MDAs escape public attention when it comes to issues of corruption? Joining me on the program today is Mr. Jide Ojo, a public affairs analyst, a political scientist, and a columnist who has written extensively about this topic. And I also have with me Malan Ilyas Ugadu, a retired civil servant, a columnist, and member of the Daily Trust editorial board. Welcome to you both.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Compliments.
You're welcome.
Compliments of the season, Nigerians.
You're most welcome. But before then, let's take a minute and bring you a roundup of politics in the news. But then let me say that this is probably the last roundup of politics in the news that we are going to have. By next week, that is next year, we'll be revamping this program in order to serve you better. One of the things we'll be changing is the politics in the news. We'll be bringing you what we call political tidbits, which we believe you will like. Stay with us.
A House of Representative member, Dachong Bagas, has advised the federal government to develop a practical and lasting solution to ending the lingering insecurity challenges facing the country. Bagas, representing Just South and Just East federal constituents in the House of Representatives, gave the advice in an interview with the News Agency of Nigeria in Jos. The News Agency of Nigeria quoted the lawmaker as decrying the rate of kidnapping, banditry, armed robbery, activities of insurgents, cultist activities, among others, and calling on security agencies to devise new strategies towards ending the menace. The All Progressives Congress Youth Development and Solidarity Vanguard has warned those it described as troublemakers to quit their decision to truncate Governor Maimam Buni-led Caretaker Convention Planning Committee's roadmap for the party. The APC Youth Development and Solidarity Vanguard issued a statement at a press conference in Abuja. The Secretary General of the group, Tobias Ogbe, passed a vote of confidence on the Buni-led committee, asserting that the committee has already surpassed expectations. Ogbe said the committee has quelled the crisis in APC, united faithful, and set the party on the path for groundbreaking success in 2023. The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) has accredited 51 observer groups for the Federal Capital Territory (FCT) area council elections scheduled for February 12, 2022. The Commission, in its daily bulletin issued recently in Abuja, disclosed that the approved list comprised 50 domestic organizations and 1 international organization. According to the bulletin, accredited local organizations include the Advocacy for Quality Leadership and Health Awareness Foundation, Africa for Millennium Change Initiative, and the Center for Democracy and Development.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we're discussing corruption in the ministries, departments, and agencies. And with me is Mr. Jide Ojo and Malam Ilyas Ugadu, both columnists who speak and write on these issues extensively. So we get to the discussion proper. As you are aware, I start from my left, from my right, and end on my left once again. So, Mr. Jide Ojo, the first thing is the impression correct that many Nigerians hold, particularly in the media, about corruption in the country, that each time, allegations of corruption or people are talking about corruption, is always the National Assembly that the focus is upon? To what extent are the MDAs also involved in corrupt practices in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Compliments of the season to our esteemed viewers. Wish you a happier 2022. Moderator, there is no gainsaying the fact that corruption is endemic in Nigeria. A few years ago, former Prime Minister of Britain, Donald Cameron, said Nigeria and Afghanistan are fantastically corrupt. Yes. The president couldn't contradict him. What people say is that, okay, it takes two to tango. Yes, we are corrupt, but you are also aiding and abetting our corruption by accepting illicit financial flow from Nigeria. The issue is that the endemic nature of corruption in Nigeria permeated the entire strata of the society, including the media. So whether you talk of, what is corruption anyway? If you go by UNODC, United Nations Office of Drug and Crime, definition of corruption, it talks of illegal use of power for private gain. So it's not just about money. It's also about influence peddling, nepotism, and you can further stretch that. So it's not just when money is missing. As former President Goodluck Jonathan said, when he tried to define corruption, that corruption is not stealing, or stealing is not corruption. People say, no, stealing is corruption. It's just that corruption is not limited to stealing. Because when you take something illegally for private gain, you have engaged in corrupt practice. And there are three major areas of corruption. We have political corruption, we have grant corruption, and we have retail corruption. So, if you go by retail corruption, every one of us is involved at a different level. Artisans, market men and women, they all engage in corrupt practice. Politicians, that's when you talk of grant corruption, members of National Assembly, the governors and all of that, presidents. And mark you, my research on corruption shows that even the military, the police is deemed to be the most corrupt institution in Nigeria by research. So when you say MDAs are corrupt, it goes without saying, because they are part of Nigerian society anyway. Okay. So civil servant, like you said in your background there, how can the political elite, those politically appointed or elected individuals, how can they engage in corrupt practices without civil servants? How can a minister, for instance, take money out of a ministry without the permanent secretary, without the director of finance and admin? Do you get it? And my research, I presented a paper on corruption early this month, where I reviewed some of the grand corruption in Nigeria. And I looked at the entire gamut of political offices in Nigeria. Mala, there are just 11,080 elective political offices.
Across all
strata.
Local government, state
yes,
government,
councillors.
Yes.
You know, we have 8,809 words.
Yes.
That
so each word will have
one councillor.
Yes.
We have 768 local government and 6 area council.
Yes.
We have 36 governors. We have state assembly 991.
Okay.
Then you have which other 360 House of Reps, 109 senators and 1 president.
Okay.
If you do the tally, it gives you 11,080.
Okay.
Now, these 11,080 are just elected political office holders. And none of them, I repeat, none of them can single-handedly engage in corrupt practices without being aided and abetted by the bureaucrats. And who are the bureaucrats? The civil servants, the public servants.
Thank you. Let me bring Malin Liasu. Contrary to the rest of us here, you were actually in the civil service. So yes. For many years, actually, and you rose to quite a level. To what extent can you say that corruption is endemic in the Nigerian bureaucracy? The focus is on the MDAs.
I think I agree with him totally. It goes without saying that corruption is endemic. In fact, it's pervasive in the civil service. And we cannot help it being so. Because the civil service is supposed to be the engine room of executing government policies. All the policies that have been enacted, even the laws and everything, has to be, that's the engine room. That's where the policy gets churned out to the executive, to the National Assembly, in the democratic process, and in the military. That's where it gets. The military, when they come in, they look for civil servants to help them run administration. So the civil service, the bureaucracy, is the engine room of government. That is where, the nexus of government activities, government policies, government execution, government, churning out of policies. Yeah. And all the budgets that you hear, government or the executive, or in the case of the military or whatever, coming out from, are supposed to be executed by the civil service. All the donor agencies we get, donor funds we get from agencies, from whatever, it's at the civil service that that it gets implemented, or the policies gets gestated to be implemented.
Okay.
And the civil service has the power, the hidden powers, to be able to do this. But again, as is always said, a country gets the civil service it deserves.
Okay.
In some countries, the civil service, the bureaucracy, is there to provide the necessary, direction in a hidden way, and it's there because they've seen it all. They've seen governments come and go, so they're supposed to, develop a sort of second nature to second guess the way the direction of policies go. So, if you say yes, there is. We just need to look at Nigeria itself now. We see what is happening, and you cannot but put it squarely on the shoulders of the civil service. It's a given. It's not something to debate on. What we have to say is the extent to which the civil service is involved, and that is another question that we have to answer for another time. But the truth about it is that what he said is right, and there would not be, there will be an all-round concurrence with this, because that is where policies are made, policy success are made, or policy success fail.
Thank you. That raises the question of at what points in the governance process, from policy gestation, as you put it, to policy making, to policy implementation, to policy evaluation, policy revision, and so on and so forth. So at what points are corruption likely to take place within the civil service?
Okay, let me answer you this way.
Okay.
What has research shown? Because I like to be empirical when I'm doing my analysis. Two sources I will give two sources, credible sources. The Auditor General of the Federation Annual Report.
Yes.
2017, 2018, 2019.
Yes.
We are yet to have 2020 and 2021. By Auditor General's report of 2019, an estimated 4.9 trillion could not be accounted for. No receipt to back up many expenditure. No voucher, nothing. Money just... We have about 900 MDAs. Majority of them will even refuse to file any financial returns or reports with the Office of Auditor General.
Okay.
And it cannot but be so, because we are using 1956 Ordinance Law.
Okay.
Audit law that Nigeria currently operates in 2021 is 1956 law, pre-colonial. And every attempt to review this law has been met with brick wall. The law says all MDAs are to submit their audited reports by so time to the Office of Auditor General, who will review the report and pass its verdict to the National Assembly Public Accounts Committee, who will take the final decision. But that Public Accounts Committee of National Assembly has become the burial ground of every Auditor General's report.
Interesting.
It's the burial ground. It's, you know, during the presentation, there will be media hype. After the media hype and the Auditor General says, these are our findings, we couldn't, there are no backup receipt or voucher or any payment evidence for X amount of trillions of naira. Everybody will be alarmed and say, hey, why so? The National Assembly leadership will say, we'll look into it. And usually, you know, the Public Accounts Committee is chaired by opposition members.
Yes, always. In
But
all democracies.
they work in cahoots.
Okay.
Did you know that the Auditor General's report, even fingered National Assembly, has not been able to account for 5.8 billion?
Interesting. So, Wali Liasu, it's interesting
I've only spoken of one leg. I've not talked about ICPC's report. Maybe we'll come to that.
Certainly, we'll come there. He's talking about the Auditor General report. And I remember the very first Auditor General report that was released by Vincent Ayozie in 2003. That was the very first one. And it caused quite a lot of uproar in the country at that time.
Yes.
But since then, the Auditor General's report has just been something to just make reference to and write news stories or something like that. It's not really impacted the political environment in the way in which people would expect. But more tellingly, each ministry, each department, each agency has its own internal auditor.
An external.
And external auditors to come, even before they submit a report to the Attorney General. To the Auditor General. Thank you. Auditor General. And this is part of civil service regulations, regardless of whether the law is colonial in 1956 or this is part of, civil service rules. What's happening to, auditing at that level?
Yeah, well, we all know it's a can of worms because auditing is a very, very extensive process, very expansive. It involves all the tricks, all the tools of getting to know how, funds allocated to public offices, have been spent. And there are guidelines about how these funds will be spent. And there has to be, they have to be backed up with receipts, with, procedures and all kinds of things. We all know these things, and it's there. But you know what? The devil is in the details. The devil is in the implementation. If you want to, audit most of the agencies of government today, you are very likely to find a minefield of infractions, for which you...
But that's the very job of an editor of an MDA or an agency. That's their job, to do the auditing. They don't have any other job. So does it mean that the auditors are not there, or what's happening?
The whole thing is a nod and a wink.
Okay.
it's a nod and a wink.
Okay. Can you
Because,
explain?
yeah, what I mean by that is, okay, we've seen this has happened, we've audited you, we've seen your infractions, we've seen this, and we think that you have breached the law. And then, but that's where the nod comes in. So, but that's the big but. You have to, for us to be able to return a good report on you, or even to, put it under the table, that's where the wink comes in. You know what? So it's a nod and wink, a body language kind of situation.
Malias is implying that the auditors are also involved.
Negotiating.
Involved
There's
in
a
the process.
negotiation.
Is that true?
No, of course, yes.
Okay.
Because
Specific examples.
you asked a very pertinent question. Even the National Assembly, they said, could not account for 5.8 billion as an internal auditor.
Yes.
Every MDA has internal and external auditor that you can hire. You are supposed to have an internal auditor. You have director of finance and admin, you have internal auditor, you have then you can hire external auditor to come and do the needed audit. Mala, have you asked yourself?
Yes.
Look at the mind-boggling revelations on NDDC. Is there no internal auditor in NDDC?
Yes.
I mean, the forensic audit. Look at what it showed.
About 40 billion. Yeah.
That could not be accounted for. That is an interventionist agency. And not only that, you raise a pertinent question, but even the National Assembly is supposed to fight corruption.
Yes.
Through oversight, through public hearing, through instrumentality of lawmaking.
Yes.
Why have they not amended the 1956 audit law? This is the 9th National Assembly. And this is 22nd year of running this democracy. 4th Republic.
And this is the 61st year.
61st years of independence. So what has happened? Those are the $1 million question. Because if everybody had done the needful and brought the law up to speed, and the Auditor General can discipline or reference an infraction to anti-corruption agency, like saying EFCC take over
from here.
This agency has infracted on XYZ. But it cannot. The Auditor General cannot by itself say ICPs come and investigate. It has to just submit its report to the National Assembly. And that wink and nod that Oga talked about happened. But let me also inform you about this. For 3 years running, ICPC has been doing what is called Diminishing Corruption Summit every year since 2019, 2020, 2021. The one of 2021 just held in November 29, 30. And another mind-boggling revelation. About, and that's why I told you, corruption is not just about money missing. In 2021, diminishing corruption.
I was going to talk about that because I also have questions regarding to that report. I have
you've read it.
Quite a bit of that report. But the National Assembly, which, as Mr. Gideon just said, has plays role as anti-corruption agencies. In fact, they're the major anti-corruption agencies in the developed democracies. You don't need EFCC. You have Congress. They can call anybody to appear before them and to appear with any document at any time. They are doing that already, as we see even in the US and many other democracies now. But that process for corruption specifically starts with where the MDAs come to defend budgets before the National Assembly. That is, even before the corruption takes place, before the budgets are passed, before funds are released, before anything is done. It is at that point that the National Assembly will check that, there is budget padding here, there is budget, inflation of contracts here and there. And they would have advisors who are specialists in procurement and procurement law in the country, isn't it? So why is that process failing? Let me just tell you what nod
happens.
and wink.
If a minister is appointed to an XYZ ministry,
okay,
the first thing he does is to look at which MDAs or parastatals and agencies are under my ministry.
Okay.
So what he does is, because that's where the MDAs are the implementing agencies. The ministry provides the guidance and the regulation. The MDAs are the hands to do what they're specialist interventionists or executing agencies of the ministry. So a lot of the funds go to them. And the minister, in his wisdom, looks at them and said, look, XYZ did, which of these, okay. And then he calls the heads of the agencies and say, hey, look, you need to deposit certain amounts of money for certain things that I would need to do for my travels locally, abroad, and also I need to look at the kind of contracts you give out, the procurement processes, and so that I can scrutinize. But of course, and then your budgets too have to come to me for clearance and things like that. Whatever you want to do, I have to know about it. And of course, that's where it starts. And then when the budgets are being prepared, then that is where the issues of padding and how to take care of interests within the system. Are you saying
that the National Assembly are part of the people?
It used to be between the minister.
And what do you mean by taking care of?
It used to be between the minister and the agencies.
Yes.
Now, with the introduction with the coming of the National Assembly, which now exercises oversight functions on some of these MDAs, and also in addition to that, passes their budget, scrutinizes their budget, and passes their budget. That is where the lacuna is, because that is where then the National Assembly guys, we've had it. It's not a matter of conjecture. It's not a matter of making issues. We've had issues where they would tell the MDAs, okay, your budget is this. What is the need for us?
Interesting.
And what is the need for us? And if they say, you cannot have your budget passed. And if you want to have it passed, this we want to add on top of it this. That on top of it is what you are going to give to us. And you have to go to the banks and get some of these things in cash and give it to us. It has happened.
Thank you.
I've seen it happen, and I was a National Assembly liaison officer in the company I worked for, the last company I worked for, and this is happening. We see it happening. It's not a matter of making it up. It's a true situation of things, and that is why corruption in the MDAs are so endemic and so embedded.
In other words, corruption in the MDAs are in fact maybe aided and abetted, if not enabled altogether, by the agencies that are supposed to control corruption, isn't it? Like the National Assembly. But this brings us to the anti-corruption agencies specifically. In the report that you mentioned specifically, the ICPC said that 257 agencies, have inflated their some of their figures, expenditures, and capital, to the tune of over 30 billion for recurrent expenditure, and about 9 billion for the capital expenditure. But reading that, I thought that it should have been more, given, for example, what we read. There was a story in the Punch earlier, a few weeks ago, about the budget of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, in which they said, for example, they budgeted 7 billion naira for uniforms, for example, things like that. So can you speak more on that?
It's a vicious circle, and it's very heart-rending. It's very heart-rending because, the ICPC report is not laying claim to have, they call it system review.
Okay.
It's not system review of all the 900 MDAs because they do not have the capacity.
Okay.
They do not have the manpower. They do not have the expertise.
So they have to select.
They have to select. So if they have reviewed only about 300, out of 900, that means they have left out 600. So if in 300 you are able to make this discovery, and it depends on what they are actually doing with that system review. They could have, depending on their level of expertise, don't forget they are not forensic auditors. They are just acting. And ICPC is one institution where if you don't petition, they don't go
They're
looking
not
for
proactive themselves.
So what they just do is that they have desk officers who do systems review to say, okay, this is how you should, if you want to do procurement, this is how you should do your procurement. If you fall short of that, this is but let me be more specific about certain things.
Yes.
That report, and I recall that last week when I wrote about that in my column, I took a quote from what Professor Bolaji Owasanye, the ICPC chairman, said. He said a number of things. That even board members of these MDAs are complicit. They make demands that are at variance with policy of government. Like board members saying they should be given Christmas bonus in certain millions, or there are certain privileges they should have. They talk.
The whole essence of the board of an organization,
which is to checkmate,
is also to oversight.
But
maybe we will take a break for just 1 minute and then we come back. We continue right where you just stopped now. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. We're discussing corruption in the ministries, departments, and agencies of government, both at state level but also at the federal level. We'll be taking a 1 minute break. When we come back, we will continue with that discussion. Stay with us.
The board and management of Media Trust Limited invites the general public to its annual Daily Trust Dialogue, themed 2023, The Politics, Economy and Insecurity. Date, 20th January 2022. Location, NAF Conference Center and Suites, Abuja. Time, 10 a.m. prompt. Chairman of the occasion, former Head of State, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, GCFR. Guest Speaker, Governor of Kaduna State, Malan Nasir Ahmed El-Rufai. Guest Speaker, Governor of Ebonyi State, Engineer David Umahi. Guest Speaker, former Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mrs. Ifueko Omoigui Okauru. Moderator, Executive Director, Daria Media Nigeria Limited, Kadaria Ahmed. The event will be transmitted live on Trust TV, and all participants must observe COVID-19 protocols and wear their face masks.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and today we're looking at corruption in the MDAs. Now we go back to where you were stopping. Just continue.
So part of what Professor Owasanye discovered in his speech at that event, which they hold, ICPC jointly hold with Office of Secretary General, the Secretary of the Federal Government of the Federation since 2019, was that even personnel fraud, that some people will give fake appointment letter to people, register them on IPPIS, you give them apportion salaries to them, but these are ghost workers. And they have IPPIS number. They are registered. And billions are being siphoned through that. Also, all manner of procurement breaches that takes place. These are some of the symptoms or modus operandi of corrupt practices within the MDAs. Illegal recruitment. Government is not advertising, but every day people show up to say, I've come to resume work. The Federal Character Commission is not carried along, whereas no appointment should be made without Federal Character Commission endorsement to see that you are following the Federal Character principle in the appointment of whether lower cadre or upper cadre staff within the MDs. All of these breaches are what ICPC have collated. And you also recall that ICPC chairman said recently, 2 public servants jointly owned 301 houses in Nigeria. I don't think it's all in Abuja, in Nigeria. 2. And somebody whispered to me a couple of days back that a woman in Nigeria Civil Defense and Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps has been named as one of the 2. She hosts 60 buildings. How come a woman, a lady, how did she? look at the issue of
and we're talking about security defense. We're not talking
security and civil defense.
Civil defense. We're not talking
missed
about
that
police
story, but
or the
somebody
military
I was
or
on
the army
panel
or the navy
was
and
reminding me that a name has been mentioned, and even the worst thing that scared me most was the fact that apart from ICPC's revelation, Punch newspaper of November 29, 2021 did an exclusive report that shows that there is a syndicate in the office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice of Nigeria that sells off seized or recovered assets and pockets the money.
I think, that report is out there in the news, although it can only be said at the level of allegations.
The minister has set up a committee to look into it. But how did this happen? That seized assets of corrupt individuals.
Thank you. The issue of seized assets in the country has been quite a controversial one, isn't it? And it's important that Nigerians get to the bottom of the matter, and hopefully in due course we'll be doing a whole analysis of this issue in particular, because many EFCC chairmen have had to fall on account of this. All of that is public
mismanagement of recovered assets.
But this leads us directly into what the government is doing about it, because most of the policies that the president has come up with to fight corruption since 2015 are administrative policies that can be implemented within, or that are expected to be implemented by the same civil service itself. For example, the TSA policy, the BVN policy, the whistleblower, the IPs that you mentioned earlier, and the BVN and the whistleblower policy. But just last week, Daily Trust did, an in-depth report on the whistleblower policy, and which shows that the policy is almost not working because, one, the whistleblowers are not given protection. Two, it does not even appear that the government agencies are really interested in the whistles being blown, and three, that we can't tell which of the agencies actually to do this. Is it the Attorney General's office? Is it the anti-corruption agencies? Or is it what's really going on with this policy? All of them.
We must own up to the fact that we have, in our bureaucracy, has become so stained. It has become so used to the ways to its ways that whatever policy you bring about to change, to at least breathe new life, to be able to change a direction into doing things the right way, they'll always look at it. Yes, it's like they're always there, waiting for whoever comes in and say, okay, yeah. And then they will say to their colleagues that, look, hey guys, whatever gets hot will come cold. So we're waiting. We've seen it all. Just like the wise old man on the street said, okay, yeah, we've seen it. It's going to come to us. We are going to be the ones to implement it anyway. And outside of the civil service, there is no other organized institution that can that can implement government policies. That's the unfortunate development. So the wise civil servant who has seen it all says, okay, yes, whatever gets hot will get cold. And that is where we have the problem. Because the government will come, whatever government will come with good intentions, with good policies, with good initiatives, and gives it to the same civil servants or civil service that would now turn it up the other way. Now, we just talked about IPIS, PPIs, we talked about whistleblowers, we talked about TSA. These are very radical policies, initiatives by government. And before they we've even seen things, before this government, on ways to improve the civil service. But the same civil service, ways to improve delivery and check corruption and infractions within the system. But again, it's the same civil servants that will sit down with, looking so innocently. We're here, we're civil servants who are waiting. Whatever the government says, we're going to do it. But they are the ones that have been given the responsibility, and they are the ones that will sabotage it. So the civil service needs to be rejigged.
Okay.
And as he said,
how can they be rejected now?
well, first and foremost, as he said, some of the statutes that govern, the extant laws and the statutes and the government administration have to be changed.
Okay.
And in fact, back in 1983, when I was getting into civil service, it was pretty certain how you're going to get into the civil service. You had to write for an exam, you have to go for an interview, and you had to go through the process of being, you have
to pass those exams and
pass those exams,
interviews.
pass those interviews, and then you have to go through the necessary process and procedures for you to be appointed. And when you are appointed, you are taken to your ministry. You are given the right kind of orientation so that you belong. So, but now over the years, this has deteriorated, and the recruitment process was one way. It was through the Federal Civil Service, but now, National Assembly members are given slots. Kings and emirs are given slots, all kinds of. So some of these people just, sometimes, in fact, some of these slots are sold out. But in our days, it wasn't like that. I was in 1983. I wrote for exams, and I sat for interviews, and I was given an appointment, and I was documented properly into the civil service, and I was documented properly into civil service. But today, these procedures are no longer observed. It is now somebody sitting somewhere that would now, be given about 5-10 slots to be able to give out to his constituency or that. And so the process is the quality of recruitment and performance is eroded. So, and then in the process, what you have, it's a self-reinforcing situation where mediocrity, corruption, goes round and round and round. So it's the tragedy we have. So we need to rejig it. We need to go back to the basics. We need to change some of the laws, because some of the laws are archaic. They do not conform to current realities in the world where things are being done in a transparent manner. For instance, the civil service, there is no ministry in the civil service that is networked. That is from a file living, one desk to the other. They use files instead of computerized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. You mentioned the Attorney General's office earlier, and the Attorney General's office is at the center of anti-corruption in Nigeria. All these policies that we mentioned earlier are being, at least, to some extent, overseen by that office. But also the anti-corruption agencies, particularly now, the EFCC, the ICPC, the Code of Conduct Bureau, and all these other agencies are directly, if not directly under, but at least working directly with the Attorney General's office. So is it that, what's going on? Is it that the office is neck deep in politics, or what's happening to the extent that allegations are even being made in the media, to the extent of even videos being shown in relation to that office?
That's the impunity we have found ourselves. The Office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice is the most powerful office among all the cabinet of the president, because that's the only ministry that is expressly mentioned in the Constitution. Now, as powerful as the Office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice is, you now have his aides and subordinates running rings around him.
Okay.
But it's not ending there. We have also have documented evidences of even the Attorney General and Minister of Justice himself meddling in some corruption issues. Let's give the example of former governor of Gombe State, whom he requested for the file from EFCC. EFCC gave him the file, and he filed a nollie prosecute to say that the state is no longer interested in prosecuting former Governor Danjuma Goje.
That was contained in one of the CDD reports,
yes,
right?
Meanwhile, how did that happen? 2019, Danjuma Goje was to contest for the office of the President of the Senate. So, us trading, and say, eventually, he dropped his ambition, and he became and then that office
it's now available to someone else.
Ahmed Lawan became the president of the Senate. 2 weeks after, you are now requesting for that fair. Then you filed a null prosecute. The charges were dropped after about 8 years. That painstaking investigation, witnesses have been called, documents, exhibits, and all of that. Now you withdraw. What was your alibi? The auditor, the attorney general said, well, you know, the cases that were filed against the man were very weak and could not be substantiated in court. How can the attorney general be the judge? Why can't the judiciary be allowed to make that pronouncement that, okay, this case does not, I mean, after all, we saw similar thing happen in Oji Uzo Kalu's case.
So I was going directly to that the Attorney General's office and the anti-corruption agencies can also say that, but it was only in this administration that you had situations where former governors were in fact, you know, convicted of corruption charges. You have Joshua Dare of Plateau State, you have Jolly Yame of Taraba State, and a few others like that. Even that of the Uzo Kalu that you say, even though it has now been upturned, you know. So they can argue in their own defense that, and all of these people were also in their own party, in the ACPC. So they can argue in their own defense that things may not be as straightforward as people are looking at.
No, but I think we have to look at where and when the case started. The case started before this administration, and the processes, you know, continued until, of course, it was taken up by this administration. It could have stopped the case. I mean, you know, for a number of reasons, like in the case of Goji, they could have stopped the case, but they went on, and well, they got a prosecution. They got them to be prosecuted and then, of course, eventually convicted on these charges. Yes, you could say that, but again, if you look at the weight of these convictions and the weight of some of the glaring glaring cases of where the government itself looked the other way. In the case of Goji, and for flimsy, inexcusable reasons, then you begin to ask, because people are beginning to say, look, hey, the question of the issue of Dari and Jolly Yami,
yes,
were actually because of, you know, failing to do certain things, or because they were expendables.
What things? Okay.
Expendables. You know, you look at the weight of, in the case of Goje, he was in the way of a favored candidate of the presidency and the party.
And they didn't want what happened in 2015 to happen.
Being a bulldozer, most probably would have won that. And then so it's like the only way you could get Goje to get out of the way is to say, look, and then being the smart guy he now said, look, hey, if you want me to, you know, drop out of this race, this is what I have a case hanging, and that's it. So let's do a quid pro quo.
So as a final question, what was the way out? 10 seconds.
The way out really is to rejig the entire system. Let the entire system of executing the policies of government in terms of improving the civil service and in terms of making sure that these policies are executed at least to the minimum, to the point where we see action happening.
Thank you. I allow you 10 more seconds on that. What's the way out?
For me, one, something has to be discontinued, which is National Assembly members going on oversight, depending on the agencies that they are oversighting for their logistics. Okay. It is corruption. You cannot expect me to pay your way, give you accommodation, to come and investigate me or oversight me, and I will be the one to pay for your logistics. That should have been taken care of by. That's one. Two, anti-corruption laws, 3 of them that needed to be rejigged. The audit law of 1956, the whistleblower protection law, and the process of crime law. These 3 are needed like yesterday.
Okay.
We need those new law alongside the current one to fight. The third point is we need to rise above political interest. NDDC or forensic audit report, people have been demanding to have it. It's 4 months after the submission. It's not out.
So we need to rise above political interest and do what is right for Nigeria, because all of us are caught up in this. If our civil service is riddled with corruption, the quality of government will be low, as we have seen again and again in Nigeria. So all of us, the National Assembly, the civil service, the Attorney General's office, and everyone else involved in governance and administration would need to rise above politics in order to get Nigeria to the promised land. And this is where we draw the curtain on today's program. We hope you join us again on Monday when we meet on this same program for another episode of Daily Politics. Thank you.